Yo, it's your boy Conrad Dimanche, CEO of PNPWorldwide.com, A&R consultant for the game. I'm chilling with my people at howsmyrolling.net. Check it out, it's real shit.
Howsmyrolling.net.
The world wants to know how your childhood was growing up as a young boy of Haitian immigrants.
Well, yeah, my childhood was pretty good, man. You know what? I had great parents. I was one of 4 boys. You know, we first moved. I was born in Brooklyn, but we moved to Queens when I was 4 years old. And my parents. I'm Haitian. My parents are Haitian. You know, so they was fresh in New York, just getting their start. My father was a lawyer back in Haiti, but when he came here, he pretty much had to start all over with his education, and he went on to get his master's. He was a teacher, head of the bilingual department. You know, first few years in Queens was definitely real rough because we were just relying on my father's income. But my mother was also a beautician, and she studied hair in Paris and a lot of, Wilford, but then also went to Paris. You know, so she was really great at what she did. She got lucky with a loan. Well, it wasn't really luck, but she beat the streets until the bank gave her a loan to start the business. From there on, my childhood kind of changed because, once my mom kicked off her business, she was doing very well for a good amount of years, even better than my dad, as far as income is concerned. So, I literally seen them both work from, having nothing to us having the biggest house on the block. And we weren't not even close to wealthy, but they did well. And that kind of sparked the fire for me as a teenager, and sparked the fire when I say that in the means of wanting to become an entrepreneur, because I've seen my mother, what she did, at a very young age, probably about 12, I would say. My mother was so busy. She worked so many hours. And her business, she was getting that much business that she was always working. And it was a cash business, a beauty salon. So a lot of times she didn't even have time to count the money that she was making. So, sometimes she literally would give me, the money that was made for the week, and, me and my brothers would have to count it, and I would help her budget it out. You're talking about, probably $5,000 at most for the week. But, still, for a beautician, that's a lot of money. So that really sparked the fire at a young age. I knew I wanted to be a businessman. Which business it was, I wasn't sure of. By the time I was 17, I was in Amway. Also I had my first barbershop at 17. And that just developed, from me making a transition from managing the barbershop to managing local DJs. And then, I segued into the music business. But childhood was pretty good, man. I was treated as the middle child, but my parents very strong, hardworking. I got the aggressive hustle, entrepreneur side from my mom, and my dad was just a real cool, very patient, level-headed person. It took a lot to get him upset.
So would you say that if your mom didn't have the background in beauty and doing hair, whatever, do you think you would have still opened up a barbershop? Is that a love that you have, or is that something that you just did because you knew it well?
Well, I mean, definitely, again, to my mother's credit, when I taught myself how to cut hair, I ended up working in her beauty salon, and I was the only barber there. And my mother, she was like, that's not my mother's, and Haitians and West Indians, they're all about just education. And I ended up dropping out of college. So she wasn't cool with that. She wasn't cool with me being a barber. So her point of view is, well, you know what? If you're going to be a barber, you need to own your own barber shop, not that you're cutting hair in somebody else's shop. Not even just cutting hair in her shop was good enough. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So she helped me get that first shop off the ground that I ended up fucking up anyway because I was too immature. But, a few years later, we did it again, a much bigger unisex salon. We did nails. And I really, took care of the shop and helped it to grow until we literally knocked out the competition across the street and became one of the hottest barbershops and beauty salons in Queens. But yeah, if I probably wouldn't have went into that if my mother wasn't a beautician, to answer the question.
Admiring both P. Diddy and Russell Simmons, what was it that really made you step out into the danger zone from being a barbershop owner to a record mogul?
Again, you know what? One is Harv Pierre, who's now the president and part owner of Bad Boy Records and also the CEO of Crazy Joint Records, is from Queens. There's a guy by the name of Nasheem Myrick. He was one of the first and original hitmen of the Puffy's, hitman producer team. Nasheem lived across the street from me. Harv was from the area and ran with my older brothers. So I had it in my face as far as seeing these guys that we grew up with start out, and I remember when they was just starting out and not really making any money, to them pushing, the Benzes and the trucks and having the toys. So it was right in front of me, and I got it. Again, my transition was, managing the business. Again, for me, it was all about business. I love taking a business and then making it a successful business. I have a passion for that, literally still till this day. That's what I'm doing with the PMP worldwide. And being an A&R, it's a lot of business that you have to do in between. Besides just knowing the music, man, it's a lot of negotiating and talking to attorneys and the production companies and the managers and dealing with the artists, as well as micromanaging the music, So that was exciting to me. I knew pretty much right away, that was the part of the game that I wanted to play with. And then I also knew that a lot of the A&Rs, they went on to be the record company owners, because of their knowledge of music. So there was a DJ that saw what I was doing with first off, to promote my unisex salon, I started throwing parties. There was a club called Sparkles next door to the barbershop. I started throwing parties. I think it was like bi-monthly parties, and I kept using the same DJ. The parties were working, the business was popping. The DJ that I kept booking saw what I was doing with my business and asked me, would I try managing his career? Once I did that, and because of the barbershop, I was pretty well known in the community. Once I did that, and, I was promoting the hell out of him, getting him gigs here and there, local artists. Well, first it was a local producer that took notice. It was like, Rad, do the same thing for me, manage me. I started managing a producer. Now I had a DJ and a producer. My brother was a rapper, and he was in a rap group, and it only made sense. All right, cool, I'm going to start managing them. Then I had gotten another artist that was already signed to an independent record company. And from that point on, I was just getting my feet wet. I was reading books about the music business, teaching myself about the music game. And I knew, I wanted to get and play in the big leagues. What I was doing was small potatoes, and only way really to learn is for me to get inside of a record company, so I begged for an internship, man, and I finally got it. An opportunity opened up when Harv was going back to head up the A&R department at Bad Boy and asked me if I still wanted an internship, because I asked him, several times about an internship while he was at RCA. He gave me my shot in January '98, man, and I walked in that building, and I never turned back, man. I just worked the shit out of that position, and promotion after promotion after promotion, was running the department. And that was pretty much it.
Can you touch on some of the responsibilities of an A&R? Because I think a lot of people, they hear the term A&R, but they don't really know the responsibility that comes behind it.
Well, you know what? It depends on the company that you're working for, what the responsibilities of any particular A&R. Because you have different A&Rs. Most A&Rs are office A&Rs. They stay in the office, they research BDS and check for sound scan and see what artists is popping across the country, fly out and try to sign them. But for myself, working with someone like Puff, who's a very creative person and a very hands-on person, that's how I was trained, by Puff and Harv. I lived in the studio. 95% of the time I was in the studio. Out of my 16 hours, I rarely went to the office. Just for important meetings, I would go to the office. So, for me, being an A&R meant I was very heavily involved in every aspect of the creative process of making an album, from choosing the first beat for the artist to working with the producers. If a hi-hat wasn't right, letting them know that, working with them, making sure that the track sonically just fits the creative vision that we have for the artist's album. Then working with the artist to make sure that the song comes out dope, from the concept to the melodies, and don't say that, yeah, that sounds hot. That could be your signature right there. To working with the songwriters that's writing for the artist. Like I didn't write songs, but I was always very involved, and I could tell the artist or the writer when the melody wasn't right on a song, when the hook that was the right hook right there, or use that melody in your hook, use this melody for your verse, use this melody for